What is going on out there, peeps? All right. I bet you after I released that video last night talking about the gold market, when you woke up this morning, you're like, damn, man, talk about timing, Pimpy. Huh. So people are like, is this the drop you were talking about? It could be, but I think there's more to what's going on in the markets, and I'm going to bring your awareness to a lot of it. All right. I really think there's a bigger plan going on. I'm going to share it with you just to bring you some awareness. Now, don't lie. We all want a stack. This is our goal right here, to stack kilos of gold bars. Yeah, yeah, we definitely want to get that rich. Okay, you know how many people you can help with that? It's just crazy. Anyways, nonetheless, let's get into what's going on. If you're thinking about buying precious metals, please give our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange a consideration. The link is down below in the description. If you buy more than $100 worth of precious metals, use promo code Pimpy, Pimpy, and get a free half ounce of silver. If you've already done that, you won't get any more. We have Pimpy's Investment Chat. It's the same name as the YouTube channel. Over here, we talk about gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, and foreign currency investment. No politics. Bring the politics over to here, which is the hidden things in front of your eyes. We can talk about QAnon, NESARA, GESARA, politics, current events, 9/11, false flag events, the whole 9 yards. If you don't have Facebook, I have Twitter. The link is in the description. Come on over. Join me there. All right. So what the hell happened, right? I think this is planned. And yeah, what I was talking about last night is when you see, and I said it was probably getting down around 1800 for silver or gold and around $20 for silver. We're not quite there yet. And if you see it, don't panic. Um, Now, I think it's interesting. First of all, let's just look at that. Here's what blows on my mind. You have the S&P 500, Dow, NASDAQ, Russell, all the stocks, gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, all taking a crap today, a huge one. So that we don't want to see this. If gold and silver and cryptocurrencies are supposed to be the safe haven away from the stock market, then why are they still coupled together? These should not be dropping. Gold and silver should not be dropping when we see the market drop. This means it's being manipulated. Oh boy, do I have news for you. Real crazy news. We're going to get into that. So this article came out back in May 20th, 2019. It says, yes, gold is being manipulated, but to what extent? Whatever extent it takes. But it's not just gold and silver. It's the entire market. These people have been lying to us for a long time. They've been lying to us and taking advantages of what their abilities are from the public in the trust, or public in banking. The fact that they're bed buddies with politicians makes it even worse. And their media buddies are all part of this. You get to this point where you start seeing that other countries, they hang their corrupt politicians and bankers. And now you start to go, well, we're more civilized than that. The hell we are. I start getting to that point where I'm like, you know what? We need to start getting some real for reals. Seriously, because these people have been screwing us over for centuries, but more recently, a lot over the last 100 years. So yeah, this article goes on to talk about manipulation, but that's nothing. So like usual, what happens is these big banks. Now look at this. Again, JP Morgan, Citibank, all locked in. Again, once again, JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, all involved in crimes. But here's the thing. They make billions of dollars off it, but only have to pay a couple hundred millions in fines. Nothing is discouraging them from continuing to commit fraud. What the law should say is this. When they get busted for something like this, they lose their entire license. If we find out that the bank had knowledge of it. If you find out you got one individual trying to do some shiesty crap and you catch them, by all means, let them go to jail. But if we find out that a bank was aware of what's going on and took place in the crimes, they should lose their banking license. They should be stripped of all their assets, because the assets then belong to the clients. Fine them, sue the managers, the CEO and all of them, because they're part of it, and then lock them up for a minimum of 20 years in jail, and you'll see this crap stop. So what the hell happened today? I think this is planned. I told you part of the Great Reset is to move us into a cashless society, a banking system that's run on blockchain technology. So if we keep nailing banks like this, people are going to lose faith in the bank. If the money keeps depreciating, people are going to lose faith in the money. Then the whole new world order, and they're going to say, like, look, see? So they do this. This is how they do this. They go, look, even though they're part of the problem and how create this and they benefited from this. Hey, look, everybody. We are exposing the bad guys. Dun, dun, dun. And they're part of the whole turmoil, why our economy is doing bad. So what happened today? Bank stocks fall after documents allege $2 trillion in criminal-linked transactions. Well, who's part of it again? Shares in finance, let's see here. Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Chase, HSBC, all the main players still back in the hunt of what's going on. Deutsche Bank, 1.3 trillion in suspected transactions. JP Morgan, 514 billion. So here's a trillion, here's a billion. I guarantee nobody will go to jail, and they only have to pay like $200-300 million in fines. Does that make sense to you? I still think this is a bigger part of something else. So basically, they've been lying and manipulating the markets is what they're doing, and they've been benefited from it big time. So if Deutsche Bank if Deutsche Bank disclosed more than 1.3 trillion in suspected transactions, and we find out that it's illegal, they lose their license, and they should be paying a fine of $1.3 trillion and stripped of all their assets. JP Morgan, 514 billion, they got to pay 514 billion, lose your license, stripped of all your assets. See, until we get this going on, and trust me, politicians benefit from this. You notice how these billionaires have been moving out of bank stocks lately, except for one. So Soros sold his banking stocks. Warren Buffett, that's because they got insider information. They knew this crap was coming, but they ain't the only one. They are not the only ones. But Soros did invest a lot into Bank of America, who's not on this list at all. Very suspicious when you see these guys with all this money bail away from banks. All of a sudden, this announcement comes out, shares drop down. Do you see how I told you guys, watch what they do, not what they say, because you can learn a lot. If you own a ton of money into bank stocks and you see Warren Buffett, George Soros, and other billionaires getting the hell away from them, you better get the hell away from them too. That means something's going to happen. They were aware of this announcement long before it came out. So now we're going to get into something that everybody should be aware of. Rich Dad, Poor Dad channel, Robert Kiyosaki, is interviewing Chris Powell. Chris Powell is going to expose something that you need to hear about. Pay attention.
Bill very quickly identified what seemed to be manipulation in the gold and silver markets. He was attuned to technical analysis, and he saw that whenever gold and silver came to price points that technical analysis would deem significant, the metals were pounded back into submission by the bullion banks that dominated the futures markets. Bill began writing in his nightly commentary, to which I was subscribing, that gold and silver were being manipulated by the banks, and after a few weeks I tired of this.
So there was proof that came out that gold and silver were being manipulated by the banks. Proof. So what happens is gold and silver becomes a threat to the entire structure of the banking system. This is why they're against us going to the gold standard. He'll explain why, so listen to him.
I'd had at the newspaper a fair amount of experience with antitrust law, because the newspaper I worked for was independently owned by a local family and was always being attacked by the chain-owned papers nearby that were trying to prevent us from getting the necessary syndicated features that every paper has to have. We had to sue them once or twice under antitrust law. So I had some familiarity from that and from my college education, such as it was in American history and antitrust law. So finally, I wrote Bill a note saying, "Listen, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that you're correct here, that the gold and silver markets are being manipulated. But if they are being manipulated by these guys, it would seem to be a violation of the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act and 15 state antitrust acts. And if that's the case, then somebody ought to start a committee to hire a antitrust law firm on a contingency basis to sue the bastards for triple damages in either state or federal court. And if somebody wanted to start such a committee, I would contribute $500 to it." Bill thought that was a good idea. And so we started the committee. Fortuitously, we got a very large contribution from a South African gold entrepreneur not long after that. We did hire a very big antitrust law firm in Philadelphia, Berger and Montague, gave them our money. And after a few months of research, they came back to us and said, well, you're screwed, because under the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, the federal government has the authority to rig the gold market.
Yeah, you heard that right. Did you hear what he said? Under the 1934 Gold Act, the government has the right to rig the gold market. Rig. So it's not just banks. The banks are being used by the powers that be. Now you know why they're trying to keep us from going into the gold standard. The gold standard prevents them from committing these types of crimes.
Completely. If the bullion banks are just acting as government agents here, then there's no recourse in antitrust law.
So hang on, Chris. So the federal government passed legislation that said it could manipulate the price of gold and silver?
Oh, there's more.
Yes, it's really it's been public policy for many years. The Gold Reserve Act of 1934, under which the gold confiscation that President Roosevelt arranged was implemented.
And that's why it was illegal for Americans to own gold.
Yes, until 1974, monetary gold anyway. Anyway, the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 created the Exchange Stabilization Fund in the Treasury Department, and the Exchange Stabilization Fund, like the Exchange Equalization Account, and
I want everybody to listen what Chris is saying here.
Yes,
it's very important, because the price of money is manipulated by gold.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
that's why it was illegal.
Do you see what he's saying? The price of money is manipulated by gold. Gold and silver are a threat to our entire financial system. That includes the powers that be. It's a threat to the powers. It's a threat to the government's power. It's a threat to the banking power. I told you they're all part of the same crime syndicate. All of them. That's why you can't go into a cashless society. You can't trust them. They passed these laws that most of us are oblivious to.
1933 for America, they were required to turn in their gold. And I think they paid them like $28 for their gold, and then they jacked it up.
Yeah, then they revalued it to $35. But anyway, this is the law. It has been the law since 1934. You can look it up. The Gold Reserve Act of 1934 created the Exchange Stabilization Fund in the Treasury Department and authorized the Exchange Stabilization Fund to trade in gold and related items on behalf of the Treasury Department. In fact, if you go to the Treasury Department's internet site today, I haven't been there for a few weeks, but I don't think they've changed it, and you look up the Exchange Stabilization Fund, you find that the Exchange Stabilization Fund has the authority not only to intervene surreptitiously in the gold market, it has the authority to intervene surreptitiously on behalf of the U.S. government in any market in the world, not just U.S. markets, but
Do you see the power that our banks have, our government has? Did you hear what that man just said? So the exchange stabilization reform, that gives them the power to control our exchange rates on our currencies, the value of our gold and silver, and also monitor the value of stocks. If they don't like any direction that it's going in, they can manipulate and rig the system. If we go to the gold standard, they will not have this type of power.
But any market in the world. So we found fairly quickly that we had no recourse under antitrust law. We did bring a case in federal court, U.S. District Court in Boston back in 2001 against the Bank for National Settlements, the Treasury Department, the Fed, the bullion banks, looking for a somewhat different interpretation of the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. Our case, which was conducted by Red Chow, who's a Harvard-trained lawyer who happened to own shares in the Bank for National Settlement, which really was the core of the case. He did not win that case. The case was dismissed on a jurisdictional technicality, but there was a single hearing.
Chris, please keep it simple.
An assistant U.S. attorney got up before the judge, moved for dismissal of the case on the grounds that the government claimed the power to do exactly what the lawsuit complained of. That is, the government claimed that under the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, the government had the power to rig the gold market exactly as our lawsuit complained of. So I'm just saying, under the Gold Reserve Act of 34, as interpreted recently by the Justice Department, the U.S. government has the full power to rig not only the gold market in secret, but to do so to any market in the world.
So it is legal for the U.S. government to manipulate the price of gold.
And not only manipulate it, but to do so in secret so as to deceive investors in other countries.
Good. So what happened in 2000, the price of gold went down to around $300, and today it's pushing 2,000. I want you to talk about, when we come back from the break, why does $2,000 gold threaten the powers to be? We'll be right back.
You got to listen to it when he comes by. Listen to why.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about the manipulation of the price of gold and silver. And it's a very important.
Anyways, real quick. So who has the power to pull that trigger? Obviously, the president has say-so. But the person who can actually do it is the treasurer. In this case, Moochie, Stephen Mnuchin, has the power at any time to revalue gold and silver. And they could do so and claim it's on behalf of the government. He's going to explain what's coming up here. I want you to listen.
Show, because as we speak, today is around August 2020. And the price of gold is bouncing. It went to an all-time high, just past $1,900. The question is, what's it going to do from here? That's the question that everybody wants to know. And who does that threaten? Does $2,000 gold, or what Jim Rickards is calling for is $15,000 an ounce gold in the year 2025, it's going to piss somebody off. And we want to know who. So our guest today is Chris Powell. He's the Secretary Treasurer and the Director of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. So that's very important. It's a very important program. And you can listen to this program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, and YouTube. And leave us a review whenever you want to listen. And all of our podcasts are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them because we don't sell gold and silver, stocks, bonds, or real estate. We're an education company. We want you to understand what's going on in the financial markets. And the purpose of Rich Dad is to keep it simple, KISS, keep it super simple. So if you have friends, family members, or business partners who are saving dollars or pesos or yen, this is your most important show. Because what happened in 1971, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, which turned the US dollar into debt. And that's why Kim and I are mega millionaires today, because we use debt as money. And we don't save cash, we save gold, silver, and Bitcoin. But now that finally gold has hit 2,000, approximately 2,000 an ounce, and Records is calling for 15,000 an ounce, our guest today is a very important guest because he's going to explain, possibly, there's no guarantees, who does $2,000 to $15,000 an ounce gold threaten, and what might happen. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I just found it fascinating that, that Chris and Gata brought out the fact that the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 said that, hey, the government can manipulate the gold and silver markets and any markets all over the world. They have the legal right to do that. So, Chris, what we want to know is, with the gold over 2,000, who is threatened? If this keeps rising, who is threatened, and what do you see? Where do you see gold going to?
Well, gold is a currency, just like the dollar, the pound, the euro, and as a currency, it competes with government currencies. The governments don't like that. They don't like competition with their currency.
See why gold and silver standard is a threat to currencies everywhere? He's going to get in a little more detail. Pay attention.
Because if one currency does well, people will flee the currency that doesn't do well and go into the other currency. Governments do not want to see a flight out of their currencies into gold. Gold is something that potentially they cannot control. It's outside to a great extent of the central banking system. If people are using gold as money instead of dollars or euros or pounds
digital
or other
currencies.
government currencies, governments lose control over the public. They lose control over the economy. They lose power generally, and that is the threat that gold in the hands of ordinary people throughout the world being used as money again poses.
So you see, the need to go back to the gold standard is that important. I told you guys the gold standard restricts the power of government. It forces them to be on a budget, one that they have to stay in. And when they mismanage funds, that makes them accountable for their actions. They can't use our budgets and printing a ton of money to funnel through organizations that they can benefit from. So what our government needs is term limits. Also, if you go through and look at all our politicians, you could trace most all of them back. Nepotism in our government is terrible. These people are all related to one another. You have Rand Paul, Ron Paul, all the Bush families. You see, the Clintons are in there. You know what I'm talking about? They're all related one way or another to each other. So a father might have served, like Al Gore's father was against removing segregation. He was for segregation. He was the one that tried to filibuster, I should say, against, so that segregation wouldn't happen. This is Al Gore's father we're talking about. Of course, later on, Al Gore became VP. Nancy Pelosi's father was in our government. He erected a Confederate statue in Baltimore. Nancy Pelosi is Gavin Newsom's aunt. Did you know that? The governor in California. They're all related. Browns, Pelosi's, Newsom's, Gettys are all related and have been running California by rigging the system now for the past 50 plus years. The one time that somebody snuck in that wasn't related was when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in office. So we got to have a law against that. These people can't be coming in here because all they do is just become a huge syndicate crime family. And all they do is just bring their relatives, and they keep their relatives in power in our government, and they continue to create laws that hurt the American people, at the same time enriching them and their families and those around them that they're affiliated with. So if gold and silver is manipulated, I know some of you are going, what does this mean? If they're not going to allow it to go any higher than 2,000 because it hurts them, it's going to go up because he goes on to explain how the debt, well, let me play it for you.
To governments.
So how are they going to manipulate this one now? That's the question. I mean, you know, it took a long time for gold to break 1915, or whatever it was, $1,915, whatever it is. It went shooting back up and then was pushed right back down. I know people were clearing, you know, the people were taking their profits. But right now, what is minutia and all these? What's the Fed thinking about this price of gold? And will they try and keep it lower?
Well, they certainly tried to keep it lower this week. Somebody hit the futures markets with a lot of imaginary gold that they sold, and no doubt the government did this through the bullion banks that trade on the futures markets as government agents. There's a school of thought that the governments eventually will want to raise the gold price precisely to devalue their currencies and to devalue debt.
So here we go, real quick before he gets into it. You see what's happening. They have all this debt, all these governments do. So when I told you we're in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in which not only will gold and silver preserve your wealth, but also give you wealth. There's a reason why these countries are all printing money like crazy. Listen to what he says.
The economists Paul Brodsky and Lee Quaintance wrote a paper 8 years ago saying that this was actually probably the big worldwide central banking scheme, that they know they need to devalue the currencies, they need to devalue debt, that the debt is consuming the world in interest payments that are unpayable. Brodsky and Quaintance hypothesized that central banks were trying to redistribute the world's gold reserves among themselves to hedge their dollar exposure.
Yeah, so Chris, so doesn't this go back to 1934? Because that's what Roosevelt did. He was buying gold, let's say $28, but then he moved the price up to 35 so that he could make the dollar more valuable. I don't know what he was doing, but that's really the correlation between then and now.
Yes, they can use, central banks can use gold to reliquify themselves, to hedge themselves against devaluation of their own currencies. The economists Brodsky and Quaintance hypothesized 8 years ago that was the long-term scheme here. And I think their hypothesis is very plausible. But for the meantime, central banks use bullion banks to sell what's called paper gold, imaginary gold, on the futures markets to control the price. The problem with this is that it leaves the world with, perhaps 80–90% of the gold it thinks it owns doesn't exist. It's just paper claims on financial institutions that don't have the metal.
Yes, Chris, could you explain that point?
Yeah.
Because that's how, but a lot of people, like I have a hard time with that. You sell something in the futures market, and that's how they're manipulating the price. Can you explain that one?
Well, the futures market, is supposed to be a delivery market every few months, but as a practical matter, futures are cash settled. They're not settled by delivery of the commodity being traded. So bullion banks that trade the futures markets in gold and silver have sold a lot of not only futures contracts, but they have issued claims on what's called unallocated gold. They give you a certificate that says, oh, we owe you this amount of gold, and we'll keep it for you. The problem is they've sold more certificates than they've got gold in the vault. And this fractional reserve gold banking system, worked very well for them and governments for many years. But in recent months, with the economy declining and the virus epidemic shutting down economies, there's been a much increased demand for real metal. And this, we believe, is collapsing the fractional reserve gold banking system because they don't have the metal to back up all the gold, the paper gold that they've sold.
Okay, so can I ask you this? How does that affect the ETFs, like SLV and GLD?
Yeah, it's a very good question, whether those exchange-traded funds have the metal that they report. The researcher for the Bullion Star bullion operation in Singapore, Ronan Manley.
All right, so it's going to start getting into some real technical BS. Basically, what he says is, You don't want to own ETFs in gold and silver. It's one thing to own stock, but ETFs, I guess, are different. All right, and they go on to say the same thing. If you don't physically hold the gold and silver, then you don't own it. Period. Period. So we're seeing the results of the market making a correction to these announcements of manipulation. I don't like the fact that, again, we're seeing cryptocurrencies along with gold and silver and the market going down. That's being manipulated. But I like what he said. So for those of you going, oh man, if they control it and every time it gets around $2,000, they lower it, then what's that do with our investment? But he went on to say, look, they have so much debt that they can't pay back, that the central banks need to make themselves liquid again. This is what that one video I showed you where the guy was talking about back in 2014, where they, from time to time, would do a revaluation of gold and silver by raising the prices. And what that does is lowers the values of the currency, and then therefore lowers the debt, makes the banks liquid, and they can pay off the debt a little bit quicker and easier. That's why right now we're seeing central banks everywhere loading up on gold and silver. We're seeing countries loading up. If we're holding gold and silver, we will benefit. So all through the conferences and what I'm hearing right now, the target goal, the target right now, although I think it's really low, is $15,000 an ounce for silver. That's what everybody's saying is the target amount, which would bring silver up to about $300 an ounce. So, somewhere around $300 to $300 to $700 an ounce. There's discrepancies between the people. So, again, what I'm saying is this: we will benefit from what the hell they're doing. All these little crimes, all these little Ponzi schemes that they got going on right now, we will benefit from it. But again, we can't just be content on the other side about how we got a small piece of the pie. No, they'll continue to do this. I have this old saying when it comes to relationships, businesses. If you're at a job you don't like, they're overworking you, you're in a relationship, and, your partner might be cheating or whatever, and you tolerate it. I always say this. This is the same saying for all of this. People could only get away with as much as you continue to allow them to get away with. Does that make sense? We are guilty of allowing this to happen. We say, well, they're the government, they're powerful. No. I'm going to show you something real quick. It was sent to me. Give me a second here. So it was sent to me. And you know what? You have to put things in this very perspective as this quick little video. Okay? Because we should be thinking this way. And while we don't, I have no idea why. But again, I'm going to show you something here fairly quickly. And we should think this way. And we should act this way. Okay? So I'm going to show you something really quick here, because this is a cute little video sent to me. I've seen it before, but it makes, you know what I mean? It makes tons of sense when you put things into perspective. Don't tell me I got rid of it, because after I watched it, I probably got rid of it. No, here we go. Watch this.
Once
Pay
upon
attention.
a time, there were 100 million people. They had different interests, different beliefs, different occupations, but for the most part, they got along pretty well. Then one day, a gang of a few hundred people showed up. Need to zoom in some more to see them. I know they're there somewhere. Zoom in. There they are. And this gang of a few hundred said to the throng of 100 million, "From now on, you all have to give us a cut of everything you earn."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the number of U.S. congressmen.
And the throng
Yep.
said, "Gosh, do we have to give you a cut of what we earn?" And the gang of a few hundred said, "Yes, you have to." And the throng said, "Well, okay, I guess we have to." And one little troublemaker asked, "What if we don't?" The gang of a few hundred didn't like this and said, "If you do not comply, we shall unleash upon you our legions of enforcers." And the throng cried, "Oh no, please don't. We will comply, we will pay."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the total number of IRS employees.
Time went by, and the gang of a few hundred said, "Now we want more of what you earn." And this kept happening over and over again, until eventually some of the throng were paying almost half of what they earned to the gang. Whenever the gang demanded more, the throng would say, "Golly, we're already having a tough time. Do we really need to give you even more?" And the gang always said, "Yes, you must, or we shall unleash our legion of enforcers." Now the gang of a few hundred was getting trillions of dollars every year, spending it on wars and pyramid schemes, giving away goodies to their friends, buying influence, and doing lots of other things. And some of the throng started saying, "We don't really like the war you're waging with the money we give you. Do we really have to be paying for that?" And the gang said, "Yes, we demand it. Don't make us send out our legion of enforcers." And some of the throng said, "You're taking our money and giving it to huge corporations and giant banks." And some people...
You get the point. This video is just really hits it right on the money. What are we doing? Why are we tolerating this? We get so bogged down in our jobs, so distracted, that we're allowing this handful of people to do all this to us. Look at this. They strip us of our earnings, of our money, of our wealth. This happens worldwide. Look at this. Look at this. And nothing will happen to these people. Nothing at all. They won't go to jail. They never go to jail. So anyways, I just wanted to share with you a couple of things. One is that gold prices, silver prices, all prices around the world are controlled and manipulated by law by the U.S. government. Stephen Moochie has the ability to do this. So when you see Trump and them putting money out there, they're trying to devalue the dollar. That's what they're trying to do. That's why other countries are pumping out money the same way. That's why banks around the world, central banks, are getting liquid with U.S. dollars. It's the fallback currency. But eventually, somebody has to pay the piper. And one of the things they're going to do before they get to inflation and superinflation is eventually, sometime between, well, within the next couple of years or so, they're going to have to revalue gold. It has to go up. And all the people are saying they expect it to go around $15,000. If they keep pumping money out at the rate they're doing, there's no way it could be 15,000. All right, you guys, so I just wanted to share with you. One, hang on. Yes, I know the market dropped, but make no doubt about it. It's a type of manipulation. I told you not to get freaked out about it. Just ignore it. Two, this guy went on to explain in another video why cryptocurrencies are a trap. And that is no different than our current fiat system, which I've been preaching. But I said there's a small window of an opportunity in which we can make money off it, and I think we're in that window, although it's acting kind of crazy right now. I know people, they want you to adopt cryptocurrencies in mass numbers, so they're going to allow it to get to a certain way, make people feel like, or create a lot of millionaires just like they did before. It's manipulated. And then people are going to go, hey, I want to move in, so I want to get the chance to get rich too. So we're in that window. We're going to get rich out the cryptos, get the hell out. We can't have them going 100% cashless, though. That's bad because then you can't get the hell out. All right? Anyways, I just wanted to share this with you. I thought it was very interesting. They are manipulating everything. So then that means we have to trust that Trump is being honest. All these hints about buy gold, buy silver is for a reason. He knows that the value of gold and silver has to change. He must know that whatever he needs to do with gold and silver has to be done in this year, especially right before an election, with the Democrats bending their ass backwards to do anything and everything they can to rig this election. Yeah, it's I have a feeling that that's what this October surprise is going to be. Every October, especially before election, we get a so-called October surprise. So let's keep our fingers crossed, you guys. Stand strong. Don't be discouraged. Don't freak out. This is the time to buy on the dip, if ever. Right now, it's much lower. So where are we at here? Because they've been teetering around the same price. And the funny thing is, gold actually got down to the 1800s. So it came back up a little bit, but it's now right back in that range of, around 1920. It goes up to about 1970. Silver, though, did come down a little bit. Not a big deal. It'll go right back up. All right, so this is on the news of what happened to these banks that I feel this was a setup. This was planned, this announcement. All right, so hang tight, you guys. Even if this stays here for a couple of months or goes lower and stays there for a couple of months, don't worry, it's going to slingshot back up. They don't have a choice anymore. What Trump's doing with the money is on purpose, lowering the value, and then he's going to raise the price of gold and silver to make sure the banks are liquid again. Hopefully get us into the gold standard. I don't know if you can do it by this year because you need Congress to do that, which means when you go to vote, don't just vote Trump. You need to vote down ticket. Find out who your local Republican senators that are running, as well as your Congress people. Make sure you vote them all into office. Once Trump has control of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, he can bring us into the gold standard, and he has full intentions in doing so. In addition to that, not only is he going to be able to put his third Supreme Court justice in here real quick, but there are 2 or 3 others who are talking about retiring this next 4 years. That means Trump could change the entire face of the Supreme Court justice. All right, you guys? So stay strong. Be positive. We're almost there. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. Thank you.